bug breach opens 20 meters from your position. You've been retreating back to extraction. Warriors crawl out first, then hive guards and more are coming behind them. Your team is already falling back, but ammo counters are running low. The odds of you handling this encounter and everyone walking away unscathed are low. And then someone throws a beacon past you, out towards the swarm, and says 3 words over comms. Lasers coming down. 2 seconds later, the sky tears apart. The beam locks onto whatever it judges to be the deadliest thing nearby and keeps on it until the target stops moving. The laser strike sweeps, it tracks, it reprioritizes mid-burn, and for 25 straight seconds, it is the only stratagem in the game that can, in theory, kill absolutely everything in its path without question. Terminid, Automaton, Illuminate, Structure, or the Helldiver who let enemies get too close. Super Earth doesn't call the Orbital Laser Strike a panic button, but Helldivers do, and they're not wrong to. This video is sponsored by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus. More than anything these days I play to relax, but that doesn't mean I don't want to have to think. I still want an experience that's part of something greater, that has lore I can latch onto and enjoy, that still requires some thinking and strategy. I've always loved the Warhammer universe, but it can be hard to picture all the different factions in your head, which is why I was excited to find out that Tacticus has 22 different playable factions and over 120 different champions. There are champions, from the usual Ultramarines to the Space Wolves and Adeptus Mechanicus, but you can also use champions from the Tau Empire, the Tyranids, and the Genestealer cults. All of this is super approachable as well, with fast-paced tactical matches that focus on champion positioning, timing, and team synergy. They've just launched this major, new, epic Crusade mode where all guilds can choose a side between Imperials or Chaos and Xenos, and battle for control over almost 100 planets on the galactic map. I'm a sucker for anything with map-based territories, and I'm looking forward to giving this a try, alongside exploring the 3 new champions coming to the game this month: Rammus, Sekitar Robot, and Darnath Lysander. I personally like the Sekitar Robot. It's cool how it grows stronger with every psychic strike that allies land, and can even enter Overwatch for free if it's next to a friendly psyker. After 4 years, Tacticus has more content than ever, and you'll need a lot of resources. Make sure to use my personal link in the description or scan this QR code on screen to download the game. And use my promo code HOLDTHELINE to get a nice starter boost. The Orbital Laser Strike fires from your Class 6 Series Super Destroyer Ventral Laser Cannon as a single continuous beam. Unlike most munitions, there's no shell, no ballistic arc, no travel time to account for. Once the beacon lands, the beam locks onto the deadliest target within its 50-meter acquisition radius and burns for 25 seconds straight, tracking that target until it dies, then sweeping in slow, deliberate arcs to find the next one that's in range. The beam deals roughly 600 damage per second to all enemies. The penetration is total. There's no armor value the laser bounces off of. It doesn't care about weak points, angle, or plating thickness. No foe discovered by Super Earth has been found to be strong enough to resist such high energy. On top of that direct hit, anything the beam touches also catches fire. A separate damage over time effect dealing 100 damage per second for 3 seconds. This is 100% effective up against anything with armor value 4, heavy, or lower. It's less effective against things like Factory Striders, Hive Lords, and Leviathans. Demolition Force sits at 50, enough to collapse a bug hole or fabricator outright if the beam happens to cross one on its way to a bigger target. though it will also target structures if it deems them the highest priority targets in the area, making it a less conventional option for clearing things like an encampment of Illuminate ships. Now for the part every rookie Helldiver eventually asks after it's left an automaton outpost burnt to a crisp. How much power does this thing actually take? It's a closely guarded secret due to national security, but vaporizing matter outright, turning armor plating and biomass into superheated plasma-like vapor, takes roughly 10 megajoules per kilogram once you account for heating the material to its boiling point, and beyond that to its state change. A beam capable of reducing a charger to a messy pile across several seconds of contact is, conservatively, converting somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 kilograms of material to plasma every single second. That alone is 50 megajoules per second, 50 megawatts continuous, sustained for 25 seconds straight. For context, the most powerful directed energy weapons humanity built prior to becoming spacefaring top out somewhere in the hundreds of kilowatts. The orbital laser is operating 2 to 3 orders of magnitude past that, and that's before accounting for the fact that it's punching through an entire planetary atmosphere to get there, which scatters and absorbs a meaningful fraction of the beam before it ever reaches a target. The destroyer isn't putting out 50 megawatts. It's putting out at least double that, just to guarantee 50 makes it to the ground. And that's assuming the weather is clear. Heavy rain, dense fog, and sandstorms all scatter the beam and significantly cut effectiveness. Rain in particular causes something called thermal blooming, where absorbed energy heats the air path, causing it to bend alongside the normal attenuation that comes with water bending light. During a sandstorm, a ship needs to output roughly 765 megawatts at the source, nearly 15 times as much energy due to only 7% of the beam getting through to the ground. In those severe, near-zero visibility storms that are all too common across the galaxy, you're looking at an effective loss of nearly 99.7%, pushing the requirement up to 16.6 gigawatts. That's 16,600 megawatts, about 332 times as much energy as a clear day. Across the full 25-second burn on a good day, that's somewhere north of a gigajoule discharged in a single activation. Call it the rough equivalent to 300 kilograms of TNT, delivered as sustained heat instead of a single shockwave. That may not sound like much, but 28 megawatts per square meter is more than enough to ablate armor, flash vaporized flesh, and keep driving deeper as material blows off. Your target does not care that it's only 0.3 tons of TNT when it is continuously being sandblasted by a blowtorch made of light. Super Earth could instead power up to 13 million homes for a day with just a single call. Very much enough energy to power a city, but the demands of democracy come first. Where does that kind of output come from on such a quick call-in? Not a battery. Nothing chemical holds that kind of density. The working theory among Helldivers who actually think about this stuff but still don't have clearance is that the destroyer's reactor charges a bank of accumulator rings, and the beam draws down that stored charge in one sustained burst. This provides a tremendous amount of power and quickly, but firing too quickly can leave the ship vulnerable and unable to emergency jump. That's the true reason for the 5-minute cooldown, especially if the weather on the planet is bad. It has nothing to do with crewing. That's the ship charging back up to levels Super Earth is willing to certify as safe for battle behind enemy lines. After all, you never know when a ship is going to need to leave, Helldivers on the ground or not. It unlocks at level 15 for 10,000 requisition slips. This isn't a stratagem you bring on your first drop. It's one Super Earth trusts you with once you've demonstrated you won't burn a squad mate alive just to watch the light show. Call-in time sits at 2 seconds, respectably fast for an orbital. The targeting software upgrade shaves that down to a second, nearly instant. The cooldown, though, is the longest of any offensive stratagem in the game. 300 seconds, a full 5 minutes before you can call it down again. Morale augmentation trims 5% off every cooldown, including this, bringing the base to 285 on its own. 0G breach loading reduces it further to 270. Stack every upgrade available to Helldivers and you land at roughly 256 seconds. Still, very much a 4-minute cooldown. And unlike every other orbital in your arsenal, the cooldown isn't the only limiting factor. The Orbital Laser Strike is capped at 3 total uses per mission, full stop. After all, we've got to make sure the ship can jump when it needs to. Used well, the strike ends fights that were already going poorly. A position overwhelmed that you need to get through, a heavy closing in with no other options available. Throw it, sit back, and let it work. It doesn't need you to aim too much. It doesn't need the enemy to stand in or stay in a particular area. It just needs a rough direction and time. Used carelessly, it's a slow-moving disaster, capable of wiping out your team without a single enemy firing a shot. The beam locks onto the deadliest target it can find within range, and it does not check whether a Helldiver happens to be standing between it and that target or on the far side of one. Throw it danger close, or into a fight where your team is actively getting swarmed, when all you can do is try to flee the foes hitting you while the beam creeps closer and closer, the air burning around it. The other real limitation is focus. Against a single enormous threat, like a Bile Titan, a Factory Strider, the beam can spend its entire 25 seconds locked onto that one foe, which is fantastic when that's the problem you needed solved, and considerably less fantastic when you're more worried about reducing significant numbers. Against the Termitid, the laser earns its keep on a tightly packed heavy nest. Drop it as the wave emerges, and the beam works through everything inside, including all of the bug holes. Some, though, view its time to kill against Chargers and Bile Titans as unsatisfactory, instead turning to the 500 kilogram bomb. That said, it's unanimously praised against the automatons. Drop it on an outpost and the laser doesn't just kill the patrol, it can gut the base beneath them in the same 25 seconds, including fabricators, turrets, and tanks. Nothing else in the orbital lineup levels a compound and clears the infantry standing on it in one throw so consistently. Because of this, it's particularly great for blitz, search, and destroy. Against the Illuminate, it performs best against the faction's slower threats. A harvester, a cluster of voteless converging on a choke point that keeps feeding the beam new targets to sweep to. Its one weakness is encampments that are too far spread out, making it entirely possible for the beam to walk its way into a corner and then remain there, blasting a hole into the ground instead of moving to the next target, since there are none in range. Ask any off-duty Helldiver, and one pairing comes up more than any other: the Eagle Airstrike. The logic holds squad to squad, campaign to campaign. The laser is uniquely good at wiping out hulks, tanks, and an entire heavy fabricator compound in one throw. And that's exactly why nobody wants to waste it on anything smaller. The Eagle Airstrike takes the jobs the laser is too precious for: groups, bug holes, or whatever needs clearing right now. That way, the laser stays in reserve for the one thing in the fight that actually needs it. The shield generator pack is another constant, especially for Helldivers fighting alone behind enemy lines. The reasoning is simple. If the laser is your answer to the hardest problem in the fight, staying alive long enough to reach that problem and throw the beacon somewhere it'll count matters more than having yet another source of damage. Importantly, the laser shouldn't be your only answer to heavies. As a result, most Helldivers also carry a recoilless rifle, Quasar Cannon. This way, you don't need to waste the laser, and you have a tertiary option if your Eagle support has returned to base to restock. What you really don't want is another wide, unreliable barrage. Once you have a clean, precise, heavy killer, doubling up with something that does the same thing with even less precision is redundant rather than additive. One precision tool, one crowd clearer. Watch it happen in real time, and it's nothing short of fantastic. Automaton plating is built to shrug off small arms fire and shrapnel, which means it's good at spreading heat sideways, not shedding it. For the first fraction of a second, that's almost enough. The plating dumping energy into the rest of the chassis the way it was designed to. But the beam is still there a tenth of a second later, and a tenth after that, and the plating runs out of chassis to dump heat into. The metal underneath climbing from gray to orange to a white that's hard to look at directly, working outward from the point of contact. Soon the surface temperature is already well past anything the internals were built to survive, and the thermal failure cascade is already past the point of return. Hydraulic lines don't melt so much as vent whatever's pressurized in there, finding the weakest seam and blowing it, which is why a Devastator sometimes staggers before it falls, one leg giving out half a second before the rest of it does, actuators seizing as their lubricant flashes off. Soon there's nothing left but a pile of slag, or worse against organic targets. But the Helldivers don't really focus on what's actually going on. They're too focused on the feeling of relief that comes with yet another mission saved by one of the most powerful stratagems in the Super Earth arsenal. Well folks, that's every Orbital and Helldivers 2 covered. I hope you've enjoyed this series so far. There will be a little break from my main videos while I try out some experimental stuff, but we'll be back tackling another stratagem category soon enough. Make sure to subscribe and be on the lookout for a poll where we'll decide what's next between sentries, backpacks, eagles, and support weapons. Thank you all for the support. I hope you've really enjoyed this series. I've learned a lot making it, I've had a lot of fun making it, and here's to many, many more.